Alright. How's it, Ryan? How you doing, man? Don't know if you're still here, but if you are, how's it? How's things going on your side, brother? Okay, how's it, Ryan? I think my sound should be on. Just confirm if you can actually hear me. Just maybe just type in the chat and just say, "Hey, Lemmy, I can hear you." Because the stream last week, I didn't realize I was freaking muted, and yeah, I was muted the whole time. That was great. But yeah, man. Awesome. Yeah, dude, how's things been going on your side? Okay. Think what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna actually just go over. I'm gonna just go over what kind of I've done in like the last weeks. Yeah, dude, don't worry. It's been a long week as well for me, man. Don't you worry. I was contemplating, oh, do I really want to stream tonight? But I want to keep the habit, right? I want to keep the habit going, even if it's not like 2 hours or 1.5 hours, and it's maybe just an hour. I just want to kind of keep the habit going. But yeah, I think I'm gonna just go over what I've kind of done. Let me actually just make this a bit bigger so that it's maybe a bit easier to see what's going on. Maybe one more big. I think that should be good. Yeah, it should be good. Why? I don't know why it's got that add directory thing. Just reopen everything quickly. Okay, so I kind of redesigned how everything works together. Everything was a mess a while ago. So what I've kind of done is the actual application itself has pretty much stayed the same, right? You have a class that basically inherits from the runtime, like the engine core runtime. You actually define here what the create new runtime actually does, and then this is just the main function where it actually now does that, right? I actually didn't know that with NeoVim. NeoVim actually inlines what the data type is. It basically gives you like a hint what even if you do auto, it actually tells you kind of what it is. It's an engine runtime pointer, which is kind of cool. I didn't know it did that. I haven't noticed that it's done that, but that's very interesting. But now I've changed things over here, right? So what I do is I first initialize the runtime. So you can see a runtime init, and then I subscribe to events and start the runtime. So the init function actually returns a Boolean. Yeah, that's right. So the init function actually returns a Boolean. Here you can see it returns either true, or if one of the subsystems fail to initialize, then it'll just return false, right? So the reason why I'm doing it kind of like this is you can see here I've got the event manager, resource manager, and render manager, right? The reason why I'm doing this is, remember, I don't know if you remember the first stream that I had. I was having an issue where basically it was getting a little bit weird and convoluted to like make all of the subsystems aware of each other, which was getting like a bit weird. So here it's kind of very much verbose, right? So the first thing to be initialized is kind of the logger, right? So I just initialize the logger because everything is going to kind of rely on the logger. If that's not up and running, there's going to be problems. Then I do the event manager because the event manager is also very much a core subsystem. So, and you can see here, resource manager relies on the event manager, obviously. And then the renderer manager requires the event manager and resource manager, right? Eventually, I'm going to do a scene graph type, like a scene class, so that I can have items in a scene and have settings for a scene and a whole bunch of other stuff, right? But I'll do that later. I first need to get the window up and running again. And then, yeah, so what I've done the past 2 weeks, what I've particularly been doing the past 2 weeks, right? That's just a rundown of how I redesigned it. If I add a new subsystem, it'll basically follow the same thing. If the initialization returns false, then obviously it wasn't initialized, and then I pass in all the other stuff. So yeah, those things are gonna. The only thing is that the only thing that might become an issue is the scene manager might actually need the the renderer context. I don't think the renderer context will need. Yeah, the renderer context shouldn't, because then I would just call functions to the render and submit objects or submit a scene to render. So I don't that the renderer shouldn't need the scene context, but the scene context is definitely going to need the render context. Anyway, so yeah, the subscribe to events stuff. This was just me testing, right? So if I go into events here, you can see I've got a base event class, which just gives a virtual destructor and then a member variable, right? And then I've got an input event, so it's just event type is either key press, key release, mouse move, mouse click, right? Actually, for the mouse click, I also kind of need to I need to change this. I need to actually split this up into two separate. I need to maybe have an input one, and then I need to have two separate inherited classes like keyboard input or key input or like mouse input, and then yeah. Anyway, so I've got a input event class here, which just has an enum. What an enum is basically just a kind of array, I guess you could say, of values. So you can see over here, you can see that key press is actually 0. If I go over to key release, you can see it's got the value 1. So it's just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, etc. So that's just so that I can do stuff like this, right? So when I emit an event, I say, okay, create a new input event. Then you see that I give it the input event type key press, and that's the type of event that's occurring, and then the key that's being pressed, right? So that should be fine. Then, so what I'll do is I'll just kind of run you through from the beginning. So when I subscribe, right, you can see I've got a subscribe function. This is basically a template where I get to tell it like, hey, it's going to be of where you can give it specific values, like so over here, type name, event type, and then object class. And you can see it replaces specific aspects, like over here, object class and an instance pointer. So when you in C++, what you can actually do, so this little ampersand, whatever it's called, I don't know what it's called, my brain isn't braining, but that little thing there means you're giving it a reference. And references are basically, you can return a pointer with a reference, right? So I basically give it the instance, right? Because what you're trying to do here with an input with an input event, right? If I go to the definition here of on input, right, you can see it takes me actually to the render manager, and then you can see the render manager actually has an on input function, right? What you're wanting to do is you want to hand over that function to the event system for it to execute at any point in time, right? And so how you do that is you basically just give it the render manager context, like the instance context, right? You give it like an instance of the class, but then you also give it the actual class function, right? This on input function, right? You give it that as well, so that but you give it as a reference that it can be used as a pointer. So what pointers are is instead of like variables stored, storing the actual value, what it is, a pointer is actually a variable that stores a memory location of said data, right? So if there's a function, it stores the memory location of that function, right? So that you can actually give that function over and execute it later. It's quite an interesting concept. It took me like 2 weeks to wrap my head around this, because I'm still kind of newish to C++, right? We did it in uni, but we did it very simple. We did very simple stuff with it, right? So anyway, so you can see here in the subscribe function, it takes in an instance pointer of object class, right? And that object class is obviously the render manager, because I'm giving it a render manager. The weird thing with templates, right, is, so let me just build and run this for you, right? Let me just build and run this for you so that you can see kind of what it does, what the output kind of is. The funny thing with templates is it can actually infer, right, what the actual type is based on what you're giving the function, right? So you can see here class, and then the class ID, subscribe to that event ID. And then you can see their render on input function called, right? So you can see it's kind of emitting and executing the correct stuff at the correct time and stuff like that. You'll actually, if I were to literally remove this, so I need input event there because that kind of, it needs to be there. But if I were to remove this, it still works. It still works the same because C++ apparently infers the type, right? C++ actually infers what type it should be based on the parameters that you're giving the function, right? If I pull up like templates over here, if I pull up templates, right, you can actually kind of see over here template variables, default template arguments. I think it's lower down. Yeah, template argument deduction, right? It can automatically deduce argument types, right? So I don't technically need. And you can see here it's actually doing it, right? It's actually it still works, and that's that template argument deduction. It's actually kind of cool. It took me a while to understand templates. It was like a bit weird. It took me a while to understand everything, that is required for you to kind of build an input, an event system. But anyway, so you can see it takes in a object instance, right? A class instance. And then what it does is it takes in a method, and then it also takes in basically it sets it that it takes in a method, and the method takes in an event type as an argument. So in this case, it would be an input event. So you can actually see on the render manager over here, right, the on input event actually takes in that input event, right? So you can technically do multiple different on inputs functions, which would be a bit weird, but you can technically set it to have on input for input event, or let's say an application event, or a physics event, or this event, or that, and you just give it the different stuff, and operator overloading I think comes into play, or I can't remember what it's called, but some sort of function overloading comes into play. But so this stuff is just debug, right? All of this stuff, this LC runtime info, is just me debugging. I was just doing that to make sure. I can actually technically just comment that out if I'm going to be honest with you. But I'll actually just leave it. There's no need to comment it out. It'll help me in the long run for debugging. So then you can see over here, I actually create a new std function, right? Standard library function, and I just call it invocable because that's kind of what it is. It's an invocable function as a variable. So what this std function, the standard library function, does is it actually turns a lambda, right, into a function that can be stored as a variable, right? And that's kind of how I thought about it. I was like, okay, well, you'd have to store maybe a function as a variable because you need to store it as a variable or store it in some sort of data structure so you can execute it later, right? And so that's kind of what I did. I did a bit of research and I saw, okay, standard function actually stores lambdas as a function basically. And then what I do is I just set it to void because it's not returning anything, right? Especially the lambda is not really going to return anything. I just wanted to basically call a function, right? So I'm basically making a lambda function to call a function. I mean, there's probably a better way of doing it, but that's just the way I figured out how to do it, I guess. And you can see it takes in a event type reference, and calls it invocable, right? Then you can see over here, this over here is basically just your run-of-the-mill lambda for C++. This is the capture clause. Over here, it takes the instance and the method as a capture clause. This is just the parameters that it's going to take in when the function is executed, which is an event type. And then it basically just calls the method on the instance and then gives it the event, right? That's all it does. It's pretty simple. It took me a long time to figure out, but it's pretty simple. Then over here, what I've actually got is I've got a unordered map, right? So what I do with the unordered map is the key is basically the type index. And so what a type index is basically a unique identifier given to like different objects, right? So each each unique object will actually have its own like ID that gets associated with it. And so that's kind of how I'm working, right? Because this input event object is always going to have the same ID because it's all an input event, right? So that's kind of how it works. And so what I do is I do like an inline instance. So I don't actually create a new object. I just make it an inline instance. It's hard to explain because I don't quite understand it myself yet. I've still got to figure out exactly how it works. But you basically don't make an instance. You kind of set an instance. I'll show you. You kind of just set an instance, right? Because over here you can see I'm not saying input event is equal to new input event, right? I'm just doing it inline. This is me constructing a new input event object like inline. And then it just stores it pretty much immediately. Anywho, well, it doesn't store it, it uses it, but you get the point. So yeah, this is just the lambda that gets stored. And then over here, the handlers, that unordered map, is a type index, and that's going to be the unique identifier. And then for each type index, so technically for each event type, it'll have an array, basically. It'll have an array of event handler bases, right? And the reason why I use event handler base is this wonderful thing called downcasting. Where's the event handler? There it is. So it's one thing called downcasting, right? So you can see I've got the event handler base, and then it implements two virtual functions, right? The virtual destructor and then a virtual handle function, right? And you can see the handle function takes a event, right? So when I use the event handler base, I use it for the event handler, right? And so each event handler will basically have an std function again, right? You can see the std function. And remember, a function is, the std function is basically just a way of storing a function as a variable. And that's called the handler, right? And then it has the constructor, which then takes in an std function. And then what this actually is, right? So I'm pretty sure you've seen most of the time, you'll see like handlers equal to h, right? Because it's taking in a parameter h, and then you kind of set the handler to h. Apparently with C++, this is a more efficient way to basically do those assignments, because it's a whole thing of initialization versus assignment. So when you're doing this, you're assigning the value. This basically initializes the value, and it's apparently faster. I don't know how it works under the hood, but it's apparently faster, right? So I mean, technically doing that whole handler is equal to h would work technically, but that's faster from my research. Who knows? But yeah, then it just basically, so the std move basically is move semantics. Again, I don't quite know exactly how it works, but move semantics basically changes ownership. So let's say you have a pointer, right? And it's a unique pointer. It's like you've marked it as a unique pointer, which I did do. I marked it as a unique pointer. You can only have one person owning that pointer at a time. So if you want to shift ownership, you then have to literally use this std move function to actually shift ownership and move that object somewhere else, move the ownership of the object, basically. So this basically kind of in short just moves that lambda into the handler. It moves that into the handler, right? Then, so, and this is so hard to explain. But anyway, so you can, where's my subscribe? There's the subscribe. Okay. So you can see it's a vector of unique pointers of event handlers, right? Event handlers are, just think of it as the function that needs to be executed. That's kind of it. That's really all that it is. I've given it a function that it needs to execute when there's a event happening. the handler is just a way of me storing that function, right? Like, hey, the handler is literally that function. So I store unique pointers of event handler bases. And so when I store this over here, you can see I'm actually technically storing an event handler. And I can do that because of that whole inheritance downcasting stuff. Because the event handler will take an event type, even though event handler base doesn't have that stuff. It kind of just overrides it. Then, so that basically, and then, okay, you can see over here, when I set the event handler, the syntax of C++ is very whack. It's like very odd sometimes. Correction, it's always odd. And I've heard people say, like, C is a lot easier. You can kind of tell exactly what everything is doing just off the bat with C, where C++, the syntax is a bit more convoluted. But you can see I've got the event handler. I'm making a new instance of the event handler, and I'm basically storing I'm making an inline instance. And then I'm basically just giving it that invocable, right? And then that invocable gets moved into this handler variable, right? So now that that's happened, whenever I emit an event, so you can see here, event manager emit. Whenever I emit that event, you can see I create a new inline instance of an input event, and then I basically give it what's happening. Is it a key press? Is it a key release? Is it a mouse move? Yada yada yada. And then I'm basically giving it the key because the key is, I can't show you there. The key is the only thing that isn't settable. What I'm going to have to do, right? And I was thinking about it, and I actually researched it, and I was kind of correct, right? I was going to have to, because this key can't have technically it actually it could kind of have a default value, to be fair. But actually, yeah, it could, now that I'm thinking about it, it could have a default value. So I could basically set the default value to -1. And the reason being is, if you actually look at GLFW, which is basically the window manager, right? And we go to the API, we go to the input. Oh my gosh. Okay, there. So here, keyboard key tokens, right? You can see spacebar is 32, blah, blah, blah. So you can actually see over here, 87 is the W key, right? So basically it's just that integer. But then you can actually see, if you look, where's it? Because I was thinking I can just set it to -1, because I doubt anything would be -1, and it is actually correct. Nothing is set to -1. In actual fact, there's a specific macro defined for when you don't actually have anything to give it, and I can't remember where that macro, I can't remember where said macro is. But there's a macro somewhere. Damn, where's the macro? Nandeyo. Okay. But anyway, there's a macro that is defined somewhere. And it's actually set to -1. Damn, where did I see it? I legitimately saw it somewhere. Anyway, whatever. There's a macro. I'll have to find it because I need to use that macro. But GLFW allows you to set keys and yada, yada, yada. So what I'll actually do is I will basically set the default over here. So in input event, you can actually see over here in the constructor, I'm actually setting the mouse X and mouse Y to default values of 0. Especially if I'm not going to use that, then it doesn't really need to be anything else. But this key I can actually set to -1, right? The default to -1. That will just mean nothing is being pressed, right? And even in OpenGL, which is annoying me because now I can't remember where where that where that thing is. But yeah, -1 basically just means nothing's being pressed. Now it's bothering me. I want to find that, but I don't want to put you through waiting for me to actually find it. That's so annoying. Anywho, I said I don't want to put you through waiting, and then I just put you through waiting anyway. Okay, anyway. But then this will probably be like... This will be used... I'll use those glfw macros to make things more readable. Okay, anyway, so then when I emit an event, I take in a event type, and that's the event, right? So that's an actual instance of the event. Technically, it's an inline instance. Then what I do is the ID, again, this is how it kind of works, right? The ID, I set it to the type index. So I cast it. That's technically like kind of a cast, if that makes sense. Because if you look over here, you can see there provides a simple wrapper for type info, which can be used as an index type in associative containers, right? And associative containers are like the standard library data structures, right? And the type ID basically just returns, it doesn't tell me what it returns. Okay, cool, I guess. But it just returns I think it actually returns like a uint32 or something, like an unsigned int, or maybe like just an assigned int, 32-bit integer. And then it turns the event type into that ID, right? And then what it does is it makes an iterator, and it basically... So if you want to actually learn, if you want to know more about like all of this stuff, you can kind of use the... you can use... Where is it? Ah, yeah, here it is. You can use this website, right? This CPP reference. So if you look over here, you can actually see like unordered map. That's the it's the data structure that I'm using. You can actually kind of see what this entails, and I don't know if you can actually see what's going on here. But you can see kind of what it does. You can see its member functions. You can see when it returns iterators, right? You can see like capacity functions and stuff like that. So it checks whether the container is empty, returns the size, returns maximum number of elements. You can have modifiers. So when I'm basically setting, right, when I'm setting the stuff over here, you can see I'm saying in place back. So for this particular ID, right, because again the type ID returns the ID of the event. Yeah, there'll always be a bit of a delay, just so that you know, because obviously I'm live streaming, so there will be a little bit of a delay. But yeah, anyway, so over here it sets, because if you look at the reference over here, sorry, if you look at examples, you can actually see a few examples over here. So that sets an unordered map, and then it actually sets the unordered map. But then if you want to set, please tell me you actually give an example of how that works. That's annoying. It doesn't. But when you actually want to set the key, right, you can actually set the key using these like square brackets. And that actually sets the key. Yeah, that kind of just sets the key. Anyway, there's not really much more to it. I'm trying to kind of making it sound a lot more crazy than it is. But then this in place back, basically, in place basically just according to the, right, according to this reference, constructs an element in place. The reason why I think we would use in place instead of insert, and I could be wrong, I don't know, like I haven't tried it with insert technically. But this you would insert an element, an already existing element, whereas this one you would construct the element in place, which is kind of what I'm doing here, right? When I'm setting this, I'm making a new unique pointer, and then I'm actually constructing an event handler in place and giving it all the information that it needs in place, right? And so that's why I think I would use in place instead of insert. I don't know. I haven't tried it with insert. But then what it kind of does is it in place back basically just adds it to the back of the list, right? So yeah, so it kind of appends. I guess the correct word would be it appends a new entry in that array, basically. But yeah, anyway, when I emit, then I use that same ID, right? Because the event type that I'm receiving here is always going to be the same event type that is being used in this subscribe function. Because obviously you want to subscribe to that event. So I want to subscribe to input events, right? So I'm giving it an input event. When I emit an event, it's an input event, right? And like, to be more verbose, I should actually technically kind of do that. Technically, if I wanted to be more verbose, and I still need to put this there, and I actually prefer being more verbose. It just makes the code a little bit easier to read, right? So you can see I'm taking in an input event, and then I'm actually giving it an inline instance of like input event. Then it iterates through. It basically, this line basically just checks if the handlers, right? If the array of handlers, it actually checks if it's empty, right? So if you look over here, this has been my best friend. This CPP reference has kind of been my best friend, because if you look at the iterators, right? So actually, if you look at what was it? It was the find, right? If you actually look at find, so look up find, right? Find elements with specific key, right? You see it finds elements, blah, 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 yada, yada, yada. Because the parameters, the key, x, returns value. Oh, yeah. Return value and iterator to be to the requested element, or elements in this case, because the requested element is actually an array. And so, yeah. Anyway, so the requested element, so it returns an iterator of arrays. If no such element is found past the end, end, iterator is returned, right? So if you see over here end, it's an iterator past the last element. So it's just kind of a fancy way of checking if something is non-existent, right? If it actually isn't there. So if you look at find, actually give an example here. And sorry, I've been a bit sick. That's why I have to clear my throat every now and then. I apologize. But you can see here the search, or that iterator, is equal to example.find2. And then over here you can see it. If search is not example.end, because if it's not empty, then it'll actually execute this, or if it's empty, it'll say not found, right? If there isn't an iterator that was returned. So it's kind of cool. That CPP reference has been a lifesaver. So then obviously you can see here, if it wasn't empty, then I just iterate through the handlers, right? And obviously, because it's a unique pointer, reference, I need to store it in a reference, obviously. And then what I do is I iterate the handlers, because I don't need the key, right? That's just an array. I don't really need the key. So then I just iterate for each value in iterate, in the iterator, sorry. It then sets the handle. It's kind of like the Python, it's like the Python for each. So, you know, in Python, when you do for each, x, like x in, I can't remember if it uses like an in keyword, or if it just uses that same syntax for x in array, and then you can basically just kind of print x, and then it'll print each x in that array. right? It's kind of the same thing. And then what it just does is it calls the handler handle function, right? And what the handler handle function does, and this is probably a horrible way to do this, but it's the way that I figured out how to do it. What the handler handle function does, that's a mouthful. What it does is it basically just calls the function stored in the handler, because remember, this is an std function which stores a function, and remember again, it returns void, and it also takes in an event type event. It just executes that and it casts it. So this is where the downcasting comes in. So you can see it casts it, even though the handle function here is actually an event, because this is a it's a inherited event, like it's an inherited basically thing, right? If the event type, in this case input event, is basically just inherited from event, so it kind of knows to downcast. It kind of knows how it's just how the freaking compiler works. I don't know how it works on the hood, but it just kind of knows to basically cast it. It's like simple casting from double to a like an integer type thing. It kind of knows what to do inherently, and then it just takes in that event, right? And so at the end of the day, what this is kind of doing is it's basically just executing this on input event. It's like, it's such a convoluted way to achieve like such a simple damn result. It's not even funny. Ugh. But I don't know. It's the way I figured to do it. I could probably look at a few more like examples, because I looked at one dude's example and his example was really, really complicated. And I was just like, you know, I couldn't care to implement that. There's absolutely no way I'm gonna do that. So this kind of works for my needs, right? So now what I'm gonna do in the render manager, right, is I want to get it back to where it was, right? So obviously you remember what it was at. I had those boxes and stuff like that. I need to now kind of get that back to where it was. So first order of stuff to doing thingy madooies. Brain not braining. Is let's make a window, right? So let's just get the window running. I'm just calling it gel renderer because I don't know what the future holds. Maybe I'll implement multiple renderers. Like I'm not touching DirectX because I couldn't be bothered with Windows, but I might implement like Vulkan. Like that's a possibility. One day, very far in the future, it's a possibility. But for now, it's just OpenGL. So let's see what am I gonna need in this? Obviously, okay. So I first need to add all of the proper includes. So I need glad the wrapper. For OpenGL, that's first thing. Then I think underneath that, it's I think it's GLFW. I think. Yeah, GLFW3. I think it's that. Then I need to include core. Need to include the core. The reason why I need to include the core is I want to make this accessible with the API. Well, actually, no. Technically, I wouldn't really want this to be accessible. Technically, if we're talking technically, because this is technically low-level code. I would want to make this accessible with the API. Technically, no, I wouldn't even want it because it's accessible via the instance over here. Actually, it's accessible via this instance. So yeah, no, I wouldn't want that either. Anyway, okay. So yeah, renderer. Is that spelled correctly? My brain is really not functioning. I've had a crazy week. Damn. Okay. Set the constructor. Set the destructor. Okay, now I want the init function. Because the reason why, in the render manager, I want to actually make an instance here. GL renderer. Sorry, I'm being silly. Want to make, I probably should store it as a pointer. And then I just set that to null. Actually, no, I can't set that to null. I need to not set that to null. Reason why I set these to null is because it's actually receiving them via the runtime. So you can see here it receives an event manager pointer, a resource manager pointer, and then you can see over here, this is just an assertion to make sure that they aren't like empty. Then you can see here it sets the member event manager to the received event manager. So that then kind of overrides that null pointer there. This, I don't want to do that because I actually want an instance, like a valid instance. So now that that's set, I need init. I need init and shutdown. Firstly, shutdown as well. So I need init and shutdown. Then I need a begin frame function for the start of the frame, end frame for the end of the frame. Then what else? What else would I need? I think that should be fine, right? I wonder. Wonder what I should put in there. See, I want this to be abstract, that I don't have to worry about it. My brain is very much not braining today again. I'm going to be honest with you. I'm sorry about that, Chief. Ugh. I think I'll just have to have multiple inits, right? Because for the render manager, yeah, you can see on the render manager I've got the init, right? So in the render manager over here, I'm also going to maybe have to call, for example, GL renderer like init, right? Something like that. Why is it a private member? It should not be a private member. Whoopsie. Public. Sorry. Got distracted there for a moment. Because that's public. And then now if I do GL renderer, I can actually technically just do that and it should translate to the correct syntax. Like that's what I would do. But now if I were to have multiple renderers, I would do something like if def I don't know if it's Vulkan or Vulkan. Whatever. OpenGL API, right? For example, then I would put this line in there, right? And the reason why I would do that is because then I can do how did I do it in core? I can't remember how to do these. Oh yeah, elif, right? So, oops. So then you would basically kind of just do if Vulkan render API, and then you would call the init function there, right? So what this does, like I don't know if you've ever dealt with, I don't really know if you've ever dealt with preprocessors, I think they're called preprocessor macros or something like that. What this does is basically says like, okay, if you've defined a macro called OpenGL render API, then it'll actually execute this function. And what this does is it gets like done before the compiler even like compiles, or no, it gets done before runtime. I think it gets done at compile time. It'll basically, like if I set the render API to GL, it'll actually literally initialize the OpenGL render API. If I don't, or like if I set it to Vulkan render API, it'll actually set it, you know, the Vulkan API. Just funky, cool little C++ things. Sorry, I'm getting distracted. So in the init, in init, right, I actually, if I can avoid it, I don't know if I should leave these includes in the header or in the, I actually don't know which is better, to leave it in the header or to put it in the CPP file, but it's fine, it's whatever. What did I set these to be? All booleans. I don't think I actually want that to be boolean. I think it should just be a void. Those need to be thingied. Then over here I'll set boolean initialized. Sorry, that needs to be m initialized. And then those two initialized and shut down. So when the init function gets called successfully, it'll set this member variable to initialized, like to true, and when it shuts down, it'll set it to false. In which case, I actually need to set this to default to false because technically it hasn't been initialized yet. Now, let's go GL renderer. Sorry, init. And now this is where I'm going to set all of that stuff. Non-void function doesn't return a value. Sure, sorry. Because I know I'm going to forget about that. Now, we need to initialize this. Now, if I remember correctly, the way that I did it last time is... first you have to check. I think glfw has an init function. Yeah, it does. It's the first thing that pops up. So you have to check if this failed or not. glfw init. If that did fail, then I should probably just return false, right? Obviously, because it didn't initialize, for starters. What do you do next? Oh yeah, you make the window. So I need a member variable down here, which is a fw glfw window. Oh, Lammy brain, are you really gonna make me look at the damn documentation again? Okay. Is it maybe all capitals? Yeah, it's all capitals. Opaque window object. Okay, I think it's all capitals. Should probably store this as a pointer. I should probably store this as a pointer. Now, goodness gracious, alarm. Now what I think I do, if I remember correctly, yes, that's what I do. Width, height, so the width 1920 by 1080. Now that I think about it, whatever. I don't want to think. I do not feel like thinking. Why did you do that? Okay, I need a monitor pointer. Is that necessary? Monitor. I don't think it's necessary. No. No. I don't know why the formatting sometimes. I think you should be able to just edit the null pointer, right? I think I should be able to set this to null pointer, hopefully. If not, then too bad. Okay, so now I want to check first if the window was not created, right? Then I guess I would terminate everything. Terminate. Nope. GL. Oh, there. GLFW terminate. Yes, it was called that. And then return because the initialization failed. Okay. I think it's context current. Yeah, let's make context current. Then that takes in the window, which will be the window context. Then okay, I'm gonna have to look at the thing. Yeah, I can't remember this crap off the top of my head. Oh yeah, right. I need to make another function, which is the frame buffer callback, the size callback. I don't know why I'm doing it like that. Probably be better to do that. And that needs to take in the window. It also needs to take in the width. And the height. Actually, now that I think about it, this is one of those instances where I would need yeah, because this kind of needs to be so Ryan, here is, well, if you're still there, I don't know if you're still there. Here would be a good example of where I would kind of need actually, how would I go about doing that? But here's a good example, this frame buffer size callback, right? So when I first need to thing it here. Dang it. Damn it, Lemmy, you've got butterfingers today. Okay, cool. So this is an example of where I would use that event system, right? So I need to do this, right? Whoops, frame buffer size callback. And then I can't remember. I think you have to define it as the same as what it's done in the header. So input in height, then I set the GL view, GL view viewport. There we go. So GL viewport. I don't think I need to set the X and Y. I just need to set the width to width and then the height to height, right? So I think this is one of those instances where Okay, why are you complaining? Different from declaration. How's it different from declaration? It's got width and height. Oh, because I made it a boolean. A boolean. So this is one of those callbacks. So I think also over here, right, especially for like other subsystems, this is kind of where you would also want like context to the event system, because then you would literally do, for example, m event manager, and then you would do emit, and then you would have, like, for example, you'd have application event because it's actually an application event, and then you would do like application event, application event or ev type, and then, for example, window resize, and then you would give, for example, the width and the height, right? So you would then basically give it width, height, and that's kind of how you would do it, right? So now, when there's this frame buffer callback, because over here, right, when you initialize it, you set the frame buffer callback to that particular function. So, I'm sorry, I'm just looking at the documentation. Yeah, so it's this glfw set frame buffer size callback, right? Then you give it the window context. You give it the callback, right, which would be frame buffer size callback, and then I think you don't need this in here. Sorry, you don't need this in here. Non-static member function. Why must you make my life so difficult? Is it supposed to be static? Anyway. I can't remember how to fix this issue, this error. No code actions, huh? I had this was a problem I had a while ago. How do I fix the problem though? Or does it need to be? Oh, I think it's not supposed to actually be. Oh wait, did I not put this in the correct names? Yeah, no, I didn't put this in the correct namespace. Namespace local cluster, and then that goes in there. Then I think, if I remember correctly, this should go into the namespace. No, I don't want to. I just want to put all of this in the namespace. So I'm going to put all this. into the namespace. Cluster. And base it all there. Yeah. There we go. There. That's how I fixed it last time. Oh, you said the stream is ahead by 3 seconds on mobile. Okay, that's odd. I wonder why that is. I don't know why that would be the case. Okay, but yeah, anyway, so yeah, that's how I kind of fixed that. Now, why that works, I don't know. Maybe this needs to be like in global namespace or something. Like, or in some sort of like broader namespace, like outside of a class. I don't really know. But yeah, that's where you would want to kind of like emit a event, right? Because there was a callback event, and so you kind of want to obviously set the window like size then, obviously, but then you also kind of want to emit that everywhere else, right? You always want to kind of tell other subsystems, because locally it's going to know about the change. So locally you don't really need to care a whole lot. If you want to do stuff, like if you want, if you want to do stuff with the renderer itself, when there is that change, you can kind of do that locally, right? But like, if you need to let other systems know of said changes, then you kind of need to like emit an event, and they need to subscribe to said event. Anyway, sorry. Now, what do we need to do? Just need to look at the documentation again. Okay, I'm gonna skip all the input stuff for now, because there's not really much of a point of me actually setting any of that stuff right at this instance. So I'm just looking through the stuff. Okay. Okay. I need to set GLFW window hint. GLFW OpenGL profile, and then I want to set that to the core profile. Nope, it's not popping up. So you're going to make me type it all out, aren't you? Core profile, there we go. Okay, that should set it to the core profile, so I can use the advanced features of OpenGL. Then, oh yeah, then I want to set the GL loader. So add load GL loader. Why you no work? Why you no work? There we go. And, oop. frock. Nope. Dang it. And then this gel fw get proc. Nope. Fw get proc address. I don't know why it's not. Oh, What do you mean extraneous? It needs to be there. Bro, whatever this is on, I need some of it because damn. Yes, I know you expected one, but then when I give you one, you tell me, okay, whatever. Think of one. Now, let's figure out why you are doing stupid things. Does it need to be here? Is that why you're complaining? And then I need to add another one here. Is that why you're complaining? Yeah, that's why you're complaining. Okay, you can whatever. Okay. Now. Oh yeah, and then enable depth test so that doesn't do funky things when I'm trying to draw. Test. And that should kind of be it. That should, for the most part, be it. Now this should, knowing me. Wait, hang on. Actually, I forgot to actually call the init function. Okay. So this is just going to run the same thing, unfortunately, but let me just let it run its course. I need to now, in the render manager, when the render manager is initialized, I then need to, probably before initialized is set, I need to then call GL renderer init. Now, technically, this should initialize the window. But at this point, who knows? At this point, Ryan, who knows? Yep, that's about what I was expecting. That's about what I was expecting. Now why? Why are you undefined reference to local cluster GL renderer init? Oh, right. That's why we need to add him over here. Renderer, OpenGL, and then GL renderer.cpp. That should add it. I don't think I need to add anything else. Yeah, that should add it. Okay, yep, that should add it. All right, man. Enjoy your sleep, lekker slaap. yeah, man, and we'll chat. We'll continue chatting, and this is going to be a weekly thing. So as you want, just pop in and say hi. But yeah, enjoy, man. Sleep well. Oh God, segmentation fault. No. The pain of everyone's existence. Oh, why are you seg faulting? That's the question. This is probably such an easy answer, but me smooth brain. Ugh. My brain is about almost done with this, not gonna lie. Why you give me seg fault? Realistically, I don't even know what a segmentation fault is. How do you look for something you don't even know what it is? Oh wait, hang on. Hold the phone. Yeah, it's technically null. I forgot because it's not being set to something. I literally just told Ryan over here. The reason why these can be set to null pointer is because I'm setting them over here. Okay. Okay. Maybe instead, what I should do is I should make this a unique pointer, so that they can only be ownership. There can only be one instance of ownership. Unique pointer. A GL renderer. And let's go GL ren. GL renderer. There we go. And then okay, let's check if it's not initialized then. Actually, yeah, GL GL renderer. Make sure that it's not initialized. If it isn't initialized, then I will I think it's make unique. make, yeah, let's make unique. Okay, and then GL renderer. No, that is not the right thing. GL renderer. Okay, and then GL renderer. Why do you make my life difficult? What does that do? Am I just a big dum-dum? Is that the issue? Is my brain too smooth? Oh, because I'm an idiot again. Me big dum dum. Yeah, there we go. That's why, because it was trying to construct it, but it doesn't have anything in the constructor there. And I was trying to pass in the freaking member function in the constructor, whatever. I am big dum dum. Oh yeah, then GL renderer, and now I can call the init function, and that should technically work. But if I know my brain, I'm gonna probably have messed something up somewhere along the line, so we shall see. Yep, that's that, yeah. Undefined reference. Oh yeah, because I need to actually... Yeah. And then GL renderer, and then the destructor. Don't know why I keep on doing that. Now it should technically third time's a charm, I guess. Third time is a charm. Okay, that's cool and all, but you didn't make a window. Oh, you did make a window. Awesome, but the window isn't even showing. Superb. Well, it technically made a window, I guess. It did technically make a window. Let me just check the... Okay. I probably need to implement other functions if I remember correctly now. I don't even know if I want to do this. I'm tired. I should just chill and go to bed. But no, now I'm sitting here contemplating whether or not I should continue my pain. Okay, so this is the while loop here. So I need to put begin frame, end frame there. I don't even know if this would actually work, but let me see. Render manager. Dang it. So I technically don't even want to touch this at all. Ooh. Well, this is superb. Well, I guess we're doing it. Shut down. And then should close. Don't know why my brain froze there for a second, but it's fine. We're getting there. And then this should just return new window should close. And just give it the window context. Bada bing, bada boom. And then that is the wrong place to put that, Lammy. That is also the wrong button to press, Lammy. There we go. What are you doing? There we go. Now, this one. I need to do a couple of things. You know, FW destroy window. And then terminate. This actually should just be void. It shouldn't really return anything. Okay, should close shutdown. And then begin frame. begin frame. I need delta time in this one, don't I? I wonder if delta time should be in the namespace. Delta time should probably be in the namespace if I'm going to be completely honest with you. It should, shouldn't it? Okay. Let's just make... What should delta time be? It should be just like a int or something, right? A float, I mean. ODR violation. What the fuck even is an ODR violation? Okay. I guess I'll put it here. Is that gonna make you happier? Should probably put it in the top. There, damn it! Are you happy? Guess now in begin frame, I need to do current time. I think. Yeah. Okay, and then there we go, and then the change in time. Is that seriously not going to work? I don't know if that's going to work. It should work though. No member named delta time. There is absolutely a member named delta time. Or is this something that should be done in here or something? I don't know. Oh yes, the whole extern thing. So I think in the thingy you'd have to say extern alter time whoops float delta time, and then that should be there, that should be fine. Nope, that's still not worky. Should that actually be in call? Let me try and do this. Oops. Yep. That worked. Okay. If it work, it work. Okay. Okay, delta time is do the current frame minus the last frame. I guess I have to gotta set the last frame. Wrong one. Wrong one again. I need to also... I actually don't really need to do much with it, because it's gonna get set here before it gets... Actually, no, I need to... Do I need to set the last frame? I think I would probably have to set it... Yeah, I'd probably have to set it the same. Last frame. Would I need to do that? I think I'd need to do that anyway, because I want... Oops. I'd want to do that. Okay, now here. I just want to set it to like I don't know, 0.2. Two. Gel clear. Gel color. Buffer bit. Buffer bit. And then end frame. Overview. Swap buffers. And then polygons. Okay, now I would technically kind of need to do the same thing here, where I would need to have a technically need to shut down. Okay, the reason why I'm having two different begin and end frames here is actually, so I've got the begin and the end frame here, right, and the shutdown and stuff like that. I want this to kind of be agnostic, API agnostic, the render manager at least. So yeah, I'll just maybe do it here. So begin frame. I mean, this I can put other logic at the beginning of the frame for the render manager itself. But for example, for now, all it's really going to do is call that function, because then if need be, if I need to do that whole if-def thing, you know, like if-def OpenGL render API or if-def Falcon render API, I can initialize and set everything based on the render API, so that the OpenGL API doesn't get like initialized and doesn't actually begin the OpenGL frame and yada yada yada. It's probably a better way of doing that now that I think about it, but this is kind of I mean, I'm learning, so might as well make the mistakes and then learn from said mistakes later, you know? Okay, now render manager, so begin end frame. Now technically over here, I should be able to go render manager, begin frame. Render manager, end frame. Let's see if this actually now pops up with an actual window. Yeah, there we go. Awesome. That's what I wanted. Nice. That's cool. Now, cool. So that doesn't. Awesome. that doesn't close. If I terminate it, does it close? Yeah, it does. That's not good. I need to... Oh, right. I also need to utilize that shutdown function, don't I? Probably a lot more that I actually need to shut down. Does that should just be void? There's no need to return. And then over here. Oh. That's interesting. Wait a minute. How do I close this? Do I just... Oh, that works, I guess. That's interesting. So you can open it up on a vertical split. Cool. Oh, anyway, sorry. I'm getting sidetracked. Getting super duper sidetracked. Let's see if I can actually close the window with the close button at the top now. Oh, I'm not going to be able to because I didn't freaking... I didn't call it at the end of the freaking loop. I probably need to free up those pointers as well. Now that I'm thinking about it, I definitely need to free up that memory. Dang it. I need to free up other memory as well. Okay. It's fine though. That's not the purpose. Now I just want to get this done so that I can actually go sleepy time. That still doesn't bloody well work. Ugh. Is it the should close thing? Am I supposed to set the should close thing? Oh right, yes. It's always gonna run because it's set to true. Oh, okay. I forgot I can't just... This is annoying. It's making my life more difficult. I don't know if this is like adding more overhead. That's the thing. I like... Maybe it's not, I guess. Because maybe everything gets inlined during compile time, but I don't know if everything gets inlined during compile time. Actually, it technically needs to return that because it's a boolean. Return GL renderer should close. And now I can do render manager should close, and now it should close when I click it. Okay, that just cancelled the execution immediately. Damn. Okay, that did not do what I wanted it to do. Because I need to invert it. That's why. 500th time is a charm, I guess. I just want to go to bed. Oh my. Yeah, there we go. Okay. Yay! Woohoo! Okay, well, that's enough. It's enough for one night, I would reckon. Okay, well, I'm gonna end the stream. For the like 2 people that joined, thank you. I appreciate the support. Anyway.